great and varied. But the number one need is the same need that is throughout this country, and that's healthcare. Talking to people, that is their number one concern, is that they cannot afford the care that they need. They don't have access to it. They can't afford the medications that they need. And it is a crisis situation, particularly when Georgia didn't accept federal funding to help with the Affordable Care Act. So we really lost out, and we had many hospitals close. And the state of our healthcare is pretty pathetic. I think we only have one provider. So that's the number one issue. Other issues are jobs. Military issues are important. We have 4 military bases in this district, and we have 75,000 veterans. Our military and veterans, their needs are not being met. I have a son who is on his first deployment to Iraq right now, and he works 12-hour shifts overnight, and his pay comes out to about $5 an hour. Well, we have families who serve who receive food benefits because they aren't making much money. This is across the spectrum. As you know, living wage is important for all workers and workers' rights. We live in Georgia, which is a red state and a right-to-work state. You can be dismissed. There is not really an opportunity to organize, and there has been anti-labor and anti-union efforts for many years now that have really depleted the rights of the working class. And a number one issue that has come up, issues come up every day, so it's really hard to prioritize, but offshore drilling is a very important issue. We have pristine coast here in Georgia. It's beautiful. And our representative wants to open up the Georgia shore for exploratory offshore drilling, which would be a nightmare and is not needed. It's indicated that there isn't much oil to be found there. And this is a time that we should be transitioning to 100% clean, renewable, sustainable energy sources. So we shouldn't even begin to open up our shores for drilling. That's a very important issue.
I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit on sort of what the mood is among Democrats in Georgia. I know you had said that there were a bunch of candidates that weren't even having any opposition in elections. I'm wondering if you could tell us sort of what it looks like on the ground in Georgia.
It looks amazing. I started this campaign a year ago because I believed that if we had candidates that had a bold platform, that stood for something, that went out and knocked on every door and talked to people about the issues that affected their lives, that we could energize people and get them involved in the process, bring them back into the process if they had left, and really take control over their own lives and empower them. And I was not wrong. People have responded in an amazingly positive way. We've talked to people all over this district. We've knocked on over 13,000 doors, and the response has been overwhelmingly supportive. And we are doing something different in that we're not taking lists of Democrats. We are talking to everybody and knocking on all doors, not knowing what party they are. So we've talked to Republicans and independents who are very unhappy with our current representative and the tone of politics and the policies that are coming out daily. People are ready for change. They're ready to take control. They're tired of working harder, working more hours, and receiving less and less and struggling to survive. The response has been really an energy, and people are volunteering. They're coming and knocking on doors with us. They are contributing. We've raised $100,000 in small contributions without taking any big corporate PAC money, and they have really risen to the occasion to get involved. And it's not just this congressional campaign, but it's also, we have Stacey Abrams, who is an African-American woman who hopes to be the first African-American woman governor of Georgia, who is also generating a lot of energy. We have local representatives that are running for Georgia State House and Georgia State Senate against incumbents who have been there for many years. And there's just an energy of all of us working together and all of us achieving something. We have a vision of what we can do. And looking at the current climate in this country, we have lost control of our executive branch. We've lost control of our judicial branch. Our legislative branch, Congress, is the only way that we, the people, can start to create a democracy that represents us. And people are seeing this. So they are getting involved, and I believe that this year we are going to make sweeping changes.
So you mentioned raising money off of small donations, and I know that the incumbent, like most Republican incumbents who is taking corporate money, has a really big amount of money to work with. Do you think that that's going to make a difference? Do you think that the grassroots organizing and door knocking can overcome that large differential of fundraising?
He is a multi-millionaire, and he has well over $1 million in his campaign account at this point. I knew what I was up against when I decided to run against him, and I believe that we can outwork him. I believe that the power of grassroots and connecting with people one by one is how we're going to do this. And so far, that has taken us, I think, much farther than his money can. I do anticipate that closer to the election, he is going to bombard us with television ads and all kinds of big money tactics, and we are prepared for that, in that we've been spending this time directly making contact with people and getting them on board for this movement and this race. So I think he's going to be preaching to his own choir with his money. And I believe that we can win despite the huge disparity in campaign funds.
Great. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about, since you have experience as a corrections officer, if you could talk a little bit about criminal justice. And I noticed that was one of the issues that you list on your website, and what you think the federal government could be doing better in terms of criminal justice reform.
Well, I think that the most important crisis issue having to do with criminal justice and every aspect of our government and our society is the fact that the current leaders are doing their best to sabotage all of our government agencies and workings and replace them with privatized entities. And the biggest change that we can make is to get rid of private prisons and put it back into the hands of those who are governing, as we are seeing on all different levels that education, VA, our healthcare, everything is profit motive, and our criminal justice system is no different. When you put money at the forefront and profit over caring for communities and members of society, the outcome is one that is oppressive to people. So I think that's the first factor. Another is changing our attitude about people that we are incarcerating. Once they've been incarcerated, there is no way for them to break that cycle and to actually advance themselves and become something productive. Once you have that record, you can't get into housing, you can't get jobs, you can't get financial aid, and you can't vote until you're out of supervision. You're basically not even a citizen. And there's no way to break out of that without us helping. We really have to invest in people and start saying, what is it that's the problem and how do we fix the problem so that you can move on and do better things in your life? So we are so quick to punish people and to fine them, to throw them in prison, but we're not quick to find a solution to whatever the problem was to begin with. I also think that the war on drugs needs to be dismantled, that it is failed, and it is the reason for racial injustice. It is the reason for our high numbers of incarceration. We incarcerate more than any other country in the world. And it's time for us to move forward with progressive policies that look at people as people instead of dollars.
Speaking of the war on drugs, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit. You also have a section on your website about the legalization of marijuana, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your platform specifically as it relates to addressing the opioid overdose crisis.
Sure. It's funny. We do this video chat that we post on social media called Ring in the Week. And I just had a conversation with a woman about medical marijuana. She lives in Connecticut and she has psoriatic arthritis and she was not able to even walk. And now that she is using medical marijuana, she walks her dogs a mile a day and the pain is relieved for her, and it has been a benefit. And we were talking about how it is really a no-brainer to have medical marijuana as a substitute for these addictive opioid drugs that are prescribed for pain relief. And they are so easily prescribed, and there are no alternatives available. So one way to combat the opioid crisis is to allow for something much safer like marijuana and its components. The other thing that is crucial to what we're calling an epidemic is healthcare. And we have to have a universal healthcare system. And I'm advocating for a single-payer Medicare for all system that covers every person from birth until death. And this has to include addiction treatment and so on. There are people out there who want help and cannot get it because they don't have the money to pay for it. And there are no resources in the area for them as well. Again, if we're looking at treating people as people and not profits, we can go so much farther in fixing all the wrongs that exist in society. We have to start looking at communities and looking at people and saying, okay, what is the problem? And doing research about what the best way to solve that problem is. And then tackling it, with these facts and not just make policy based on emotion and that's punitive and not productive.
So we often ask women who are mothers of small children about running for office with kids. 3 of your kids, at least, are a little bit older, and you said you have an 11-year-old as well. But what do you think being a mother of children who are now a little older, being a military mom, what does that bring to your perspective on running for office and on the kinds of things that Congress could and should be doing?
That's a really good question that nobody's ever asked me before. I think that being a mother qualifies us for positions, all positions. Really, when you're caring for other people and seeing what needs they have and how to best meet their needs, you are empathetic to others and you are also able as a mother to multitask, to handle everything at the same time that needs to be handled. But with each of my children, I've learned different aspects of what is important in society today. Like, for example, I have a daughter who went to college at Georgia State. Let me give you a little bit of background. We moved to Georgia, first of all, for the warm weather, but also because they offered a tuition-free public college. The first year that we moved here, there was a snowstorm, and they started to do away with the Hope Scholarship, and now they don't have this tuition-free college. But I've watched my daughter struggle to pay tuition because we could not pay it for her, and receive student loans, and then have to work 2 jobs and not be able to complete college. So she dropped out of school because she couldn't afford it anymore, and now she has to pay back student loans. I'm also paying back student loans, so I know what that's like. But our system is set up in a way that kids can't go to college. They end up with this enormous debt from student loans. And what I'm trying to say is that I'm living experiences through my children that are very important in this country, and they help me to see how to best serve the needs of the people of my district and of this country. But I think that being a mother really does prepare you for anything that life may throw at you.
Yeah.
And especially having 4 kids, all different ages, has been a challenge in diplomacy and negotiation, which is something that could be helpful in Congress.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, surely if you can wrangle the kids, you can.
Absolutely. I would think so anyway.
Yeah.
And running for office with Wyatt, my 11-year-old, has been a great experience because it's actually been a bonding experience for us.